Today we are talking about Feng Shui elements. Hello Feng Shui Nation, it's Safrina from Feng Shui and Prosper, and this is the channel where we talk about real Feng Shui for real results, where we demystify Feng Shui super myths and help you get on the right path of classical Feng Shui, the way Feng Shui was meant to be practiced. On today's video, we are talking about Flying Stars Feng Shui specifically and its elements. Now, for those of you who are kind of new in Feng Shui, most of you guys will be practicing what I call fast food Feng Shui. You would have been exposed to the Bagua that says the elements for the room in the south is fire, so you need more red or yellows there. The room in the north has to have water elements, so it needs to be blue. Or the room in the east or the southeast is wood, so you need to paint those rooms over there green. How many of you guys have heard that generalized advice? Does it make sense that all the homes in this beautiful earth of ours, all the billions and trillions of homes, does it make sense that all of these homes should be colored the same way? That everyone should have a fiery south room, that everyone should have a blue north room, and so on and so forth? If you really think about it, these general advice actually does not make sense. Because, and I always say this, the Feng Shui for your house is as unique as a fingerprint, okay? The way to Feng Shui your home will be different from the way your neighbor right next door or down the street or a house all across the other side of the earth is going to Feng Shui their home. Because all these homes, they have a different layout, they have a different facing, and they have a different Feng Shui period. Now, if you are not familiar with these terms, I will put up here, I will put up a card about the an older video that I did about Feng Shui period, and I'll add up another card here, another link, where I talk about Feng Shui directions. You can take a look at that. But in this video, we are talking about how the heck does one go about figuring out the colors and the elements needed in their rooms. Now, if Chinese metaphysics is new to you, there are 5 elements in Chinese metaphysics: fire, earth, wood, metal, water. Okay, and each of these elements, sure, they have their own colors, but they also have their own specific innate characteristics. Okay, and today we are talking about specifically Flying Star Feng Shui. Now, I'm going to be showing a chart here, which is the Luo Shu chart. And I'm not going to go into the mythology of how the Luo Shu chart came about, but this is one of the foundational chart that any classical Feng Shui enthusiast must be familiar with. Now, you're going to see in this chart that there are numbers 1 to 9, and these numbers take up a specific direction. Now, the direction is not just north, south, east, west, which are the cardinal directions. We're also looking at the non-cardinal directions, which is southeast, southwest, northwest, and northeast. And all these numbers have a directional palace, quote unquote, if you want to call it that way, okay? So you're going to see number 1 in the north, number 9 in the south, number 7 in the northwest, the number 7 in the west, number 6 in the northwest, number 2 in the southwest, 8 in the northeast, 3 in the east, and 4 in the southeast. Now, this is where Fast Food Feng Shui kind of ran with it and just said, okay, because of these numbers and their and the elements that are connected to these directions, just based on this, that everyone should have their directions painted in the same color. It's Feng Shui, unfortunately, is not as simplistic as that. They were right in the sense that Flying Star with the numbers 1 to 9, each of these numbers are related to one element. And they are correct in that these numbers have a specific palace based on the Lo Shu pattern. However, when you're actually doing Flying Star Feng Shui, or when you're actually doing Feng Shui, whether or not your east room actually needs green is not because that room is in the east and the element related to the east is wood or green. That's not the case at all. In Flying Star Feng Shui, there's this thing called the 81 combinations, where you're going to see, and I'm going to put a chart here, okay, where you're going to see on each of the 3x3 grids, each of those numbers have a smaller number on the top left and another smaller number on the top right. And these numbers, sometimes they're the same element, sometimes they're opposing elements. And so whether, with regards to what element you need in each of these rooms is really based on what's the top left, which is also known as the sitting star or the mountain star, as well as what's the top right number, which is also known as the water star or the facing star. The practice of figuring out what is the actual element needed in these rooms is something that I cover in my certification course. It is something that can really, that has really spun a lot of my students' head around, because it's not clear cut most of the time. And these combinations of these numbers, the top left and the top right numbers, each combination have a different meaning as well. And so depending on what energy you want to activate, that will also inform what kind of element you want in that room. So for instance, in a 7-9 combination, in my lineage, the lineage of Grandmaster Tan Yang Wu, 7-9 here means health and relationship will be will not be very supported here. There is money energy, but at the same time there's also loss, robbery, illnesses, and stresses around relationship and physical and maybe even mental health. And this combination can also, in certain cases, trigger affairs where relationships are concerned. And so the element for 7, I'm going to put the Lo Shu chart here. The element for 7 is metal, and the element for element for 9 is fire. Now, do you want to remedy the number 7 so that you don't you're not being challenged with health and relationship issues? Or do you want to activate the fire, which will increase the money? Well, it depends on what room it is. If this is the bedroom and your marriage or your relationship is already in trouble, I would actually remedy the number 7. And I'm gonna do another video about the 5-element cycle here. So stay tuned for that one. Health, relationship, and money are the 3 big areas that everyone wants, right? But sometimes, depending on this 81 combination, not everything is good. So you kind of have to figure out, okay, what's my priority here? Do I want better health and relationship, or do I want more money? And based on that then determines what elements you use. Now, do you guys see? I know some of you guys are scratching your head here, but that really is every day, each and every day, as a Feng Shui consultant, myself and other classically trained Feng Shui consultants, these are the things that we have to grapple with. And most of the time I ask my clients, okay, well, this is your bedroom. You have to tell me what you want to activate, and then we'll figure out the elements that is the best for this room. So it's not always clear cut. So the moment you see a book or an expert or an article that says everyone's room in the north needs more blue, everyone's room in the south needs more red, everyone's room in the east needs more green, everyone's room in the west needs more gray, that is not how you use feng shui and its elements. It is not as simplistic as that. I'm sorry to say. And I know most of you guys are going to throw up your hand. You're going to be like, okay, then how do I figure out? How do I figure out what elements to use? Now, again, it really depends on each and every person's priority. For some people, health and relationship is priority. And for some people, their career and their investments or their business is priority. So it's best for your next step to research on Flying Star Feng Shui. Now, I do have a caveat. Different lineage of Flying Star Feng Shui will have different interpretation of the 81 combination. Okay, I'm just gonna put it out here. So my Grandmaster's interpretation of the 81 combination will be different from other schools, most of the time anyway, not everything, because some schools do agree on certain things. We're not always bickering with each other, but but that is basically how we determine the elements that are needed. First, we look at what are the flying stars there. Two, we look at who is affected there. Which I know I haven't talked about in this video, but it's just gonna be another topic for a different day. And then three is what's the energy that we actually want to activate in this room? Is this the office? Is this the front door? Is this the kitchen? Is this the bedroom? It really depends on the client's needs and priorities, and then we go from there in terms of, okay, if this is what they want to activate for now, then based on the 81 combination here, this is the element that we're going to go for, right? So when people ask me, Safrina, what's the best color for myself? Then I'll say, I don't know your period, I don't know your facing, I don't know your layout, I don't know what your priorities are. So it's going to be hard for me to just give you a generalized advice here. So hopefully you guys will see behind my feng shui eyes what are the things that I look at, and these are the same things that I train my students and guide my students to look at as well. It's not, feng shui is not cookie cutter, okay? You cannot do a copy and paste feng shui. What works for my house will not work for yours, because we have, again, different layout, different period, different facing, different priorities, right? So these are the things that I want to set the record straight, because if you are still following an expert or a book or an article that gives you generalized element to use for these directions, I'm sorry, you got to put that aside, because that's just going to lead you down the wrong path. And most of the time, if you're lucky, you'll get no results if you put those elements like that. But if you're unlucky, following the elemental placements with that simplistic chart could actually land you into trouble. So that's my piece that I want to say for today, is that feng shui and its elements is not as simple as most books or articles or quote-unquote experts want you to think it is. If you have any other questions regarding feng shui and elements, put your comments below the video, and maybe that'll be another question or another topic that I can address in a different video. Now, if you like what I've covered so far, and if I am brand new to you, make sure you hit subscribe and hit the notification button, because I will be uploading a new video every Thursday. I hope to see you next week.